All right, buckle up, everybody, because we're diving headfirst into the Gospel of Mark.
We're talking about the nitty-gritty, the real deal Jesus.
None of that watered-down stuff.
And we've got a fantastic guide for this journey, Pastor Clay Gibbons and his incredible sermon.
This is way more than your average Sunday school lesson, trust me.
What's striking about Mark is how he just grabs you from the very first word, the beginning.
You're messing around, right? Straight into the action.
It's like he's cutting through all the noise and clutter of Roman life, saying, listen up, this is important.
Gibbons makes an interesting point about that phrase, good news, or gospel. It had a totally different meaning back then, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For Romans, gospel meant whatever Caesar Augustus decided it meant.
Because he was the big man in charge.
Right, think of it like a propaganda campaign. In fact, there's even an inscription from that time. The birthday of the god Augustus was the beginning of the gospel of the world.
Talk about an ego trip, huh? Caesar, he's the good news.
Yeah, but comparing that to Jesus' gospel, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm with you. So Caesar's hawking earthly power. What's at the heart of Jesus' good news?
It's about something so much bigger. It's the kingdom of God, something that lasts, unlike any human empire.
It's a whole different ballgame, right?
Completely. We're talking about love, sacrifice, a path to salvation, things Caesar could never offer.
Okay, so two radically different gospels, but then Mark just comes right out and says, this good news, this gospel, it's not an idea, it's a person.
And not just any person, it's Jesus. A name packed with meaning, by the way.
Because in the Bible, names aren't just random labels. There's always something deeper going on.
Exactly. They reveal character, destiny, all that good stuff. And Jesus, it's the Greek form of the Hebrew Joshua.
Okay, so where's this going?
Both names, both Jesus and Joshua, they mean salvation.
Wow, okay, so this guy named Salvation shows up on the scene. Talk about making an entrance. But then Mark takes it even further. He calls Jesus Christ. Now, for those of us who might have missed a few Sunday school classes, what's the big deal about being anointed back then?
Okay, so in the Old Testament, priests, prophets, kings, they were anointed with oil. It was a symbol.
It's like being chosen for the most important job in the world. Right?
Exactly. Publicly chosen, set apart by God for a special purpose.
But instead of a fancy office, you get anointed with oil.
It was a big deal. And Gibbons makes a brilliant point here. He says, Mark is connecting with his audience, especially the Jewish people who are waiting for the Messiah.
Ah, okay. So it's like Mark is saying, remember all those prophecies. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. Jesus, he's the anointed one.
Exactly. He's fulfilling a deep longing, a hope that's been building for generations.
Okay, so we've got Jesus, the promised Messiah. But hold on, Mark doesn't stop there. He calls Jesus the Son of God. And that takes things to a whole other level.
You're telling me this is where Christianity takes a sharp turn from other faiths?
All right, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
So think about it. A lot of religions, they focus on what we do to reach godlike good deeds, rituals.
Trying to climb our way up to him.
Exactly. Christianity flips that on its head. Gibbons really stresses this. It's not about us struggling to reach God. It's about God reaching down to us.
And that's where Jesus comes in.
You got it. He's the bridge.
Yeah.
God taking on human form. This is the big, mind-blowing idea of the incarnation.
Incarnation. Whoa. Okay, now that's something we might need a whole other deep dive to unpack.
Definitely a lot to chew on there.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, so before the break, we were talking about God reaching out to us, taking human form.
The incarnation.
Yeah, exactly.
Heavy stuff.
No kidding.
Really makes you think.
It does. But let's back up for a sec, just to that first verse of Mark. It's like he lays out the entire gospel right there.
It's remarkable, isn't it? He establishes Jesus as the Messiah, Son of God, the whole 9 yards right off the bat.
Let's talk about a powerful introduction. But here's what gets me, Mark, and probably Peter spreading the word. They were really sticking their necks out with these claims.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the Roman Empire we're talking about, where Caesar was considered divine. To come along and say, nope, Jesus is the real Son of God, that took guts.
Seriously. Risking it all to share that message.
It really makes you wonder, what was it about Jesus that made them so passionate, so convinced?
And why is he still so challenging today? What is it about Jesus that still rubs some people the wrong way?
You know, that's a great question. And there's no easy answer. For a lot of people, it's the radical stuff he said. Love your enemies, forgive endlessly. That's tough stuff.
It goes against all our natural instincts, right? Turn the other cheek. It's like he's asking us to completely rethink how we live, how we treat each other.
And then there's that whole Son of God thing, which is a non-starter for a lot of folks, and I get that.
Yeah, it's not something you just accept without some serious wrestling with it.
Right. And Pastor Gibbons kept coming back to this idea of the real Jesus, not some watered-down
The
version.
guy who wasn't afraid to turn some tables over. Yeah.
Exactly. He challenged the status quo, ruffled some feathers, and those first disciples, they were willing to drop everything and follow him. There's something powerful about that.
There's gotta be. So what do you think? What is it about Jesus that's still so compelling, so challenging?
That's something I think we all have to wrestle with for ourselves, right?
Yeah, good point.
It's a question worth sitting with for a bit. Why don't we give our listeners some homework?
I like it. So here's your food for thought, folks. What aspect of Jesus' life or teachings do you find most challenging? And why? Think about it, and we'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the Gospel of Mark.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, before the break, we asked what part of Jesus' life or teachings you find most challenging.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It really makes you think. It's easy to focus on the feel-good parts, but those challenges, those are where things get interesting.
Absolutely. And, Mark's Gospel
Yeah.
doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, not one bit.
That's for sure. This isn't some watered-down Hallmark Channel version of Jesus.
No way. This is raw, gritty, in-your-face stuff.
And you know what else struck me? It's like Mark isn't just telling us about Jesus, he's showing us.
Right. Action-packed storytelling. We're right there with Jesus experiencing the highs, the lows, the whole shebang. Exactly. And those three confessions, we talked about Mark's own intro, Peter saying, "You're the Messiah," and then that Roman centurion at the cross. This man really was the Son of God.
Talk about powerful moments. It's like those three confessions, they're holding up the whole gospel.
Right. Like Mark is laying down the foundation boom. Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And then he just unleashes this incredible story to back it all up. So what are some of those key moments that really bring those claims home?
Oh, man, you can't talk about Mark without talking about the miracles, right?
So many miracles.
Healing the sick, calming storms, even raising the dead. Mark's not holding back.
Yeah.
But Gibbons makes a good point about these miracles. They're not just for show.
Yeah, it's not like Jesus is just showing off or something.
Right. There's a purpose behind every miracle. It's about revealing something deeper about God, about who Jesus really is.
Like that time he feeds the 5,000. It's a miracle, sure, but it's also about Jesus satisfying a much deeper hunger.
Exactly. He's not just filling stomachs, he's nourishing souls.
And then there are those times when Jesus goes head to head with the religious leaders.
Hmm.
Those stories always get me fired up.
Oh, yeah, me too. Calling out their hypocrisy, challenging the whole system.
But those confrontations, they were huge for the people back then, weren't they?
Hugely important. Remember, they were stuck under Roman rule, but also trapped by this rigid religious system. It's like they're being crushed on both sides.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that.
And Jesus comes in, turns everything upside down, challenging the status quo, demanding people to rethink their priorities, to live for a different kind of kingdom.
It's a message that still resonates today, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. And maybe that's the point, The real Jesus, he's not safe. He's not predictable.
Right. It's not always easy following him, that's for sure.
But it's an adventure.
It is. And that's what Mark's gospel is, an invitation to step out of your comfort zone and follow this radical, life-changing person.
It's a call to action. It's like Mark is saying, are you ready to truly live? So as we wrap things up today, I hope you'll take another look at Mark's gospel. It's a wild ride, a roller coaster of emotions, but ultimately it points to the most incredible message. That God's love for us is so powerful, so limitless, that he would move heaven and earth to bring us back to himself.
That's the good news.
That's the gospel right there. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and until next time, keep seeking truth.